To the Business Support and Digital Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. We have a smaller agenda tonight due to the portfolio holder for business management, Councillor Van Dijk, who was due to be held to account tonight, being unable to attend. Apologies for absence. Councillor Govan.
Councillor Joy, Chair.
Councillor Adam Mashana, I'm subbing for tonight.
Thank you. Record of the meeting. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 31st of August as correct? Thank you. Urgent matters, there are none. Disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests in whipping. Are there any DPR or any other interests or any declarations of whipping? That brings us to agenda item 5, use of agency staff and consultant. Sam Beck-Farley, Chief Organizational Cultural Officer, will introduce the report. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. This report has been requested by this committee. It was a request to look at our engagement across agency workers, which predominantly cover our establishment posts, where there's a skill shortage in the market, as well as consultants, whereby they come in and do project work with us. The report highlights how many we have engaged with us at the moment and the cost in doing so. The report also highlights some plans that we have in place to reduce the reliance on our agency workers, and that's largely around recruitment and retention issues, which resides within children's, adults and legal services. Therefore, committee are asked to note the contents of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any member? Councillor Prunton.
Thank you, Sam. Just a couple of quick questions. Is there a particular reason why there's an increase in the staff, use agency staff from last year to this year? And also, there's a couple of things actually. Is that all right? So where there's a portion of short-term project staff, what is the portion between long-term and short-term in terms of the roles that we're having to go out to agencies for? So I know there's 193, but are the majority short-term because we need that specialist skill, or are they long-term positions we just can't fill? And I know that children's, adult and legal are all really the burden is on those areas where we need to use the agencies, but there were 39 roles that weren't, so what sort of positions were they? And then my last point was, it's good to see the apprenticeship programmes. What are we doing to keep these workers, once they qualify in the role, to keep them to build their careers with Medway so that we don't lose them going forward instead of having to recruit from outside as they into the more senior positions? So what we're doing to keep those staff who remain loyal to Medway and don't leave necessarily to go for higher salaries elsewhere. Thank you.
Sam.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your questions. So the staff increase, the market's very different coming out of COVID. So we have seen, particularly on our children's improvement journey, we made some really good inroads into getting permanent placements, and that was probably largely around the uncertainty around sick pay, for example, if you was a locum versus somebody who was on a permanent contract. So we saw a lot of conversions, and we had gone down quite considerably in our vacancy rate as a result. Then once everything opens up again, with the challenges of working at home, we then had a larger pool, really, in terms of our competition. So, for example, we've got KCC right on our doorstep. We've also got the inner London boroughs that are paying a higher amount across their Memorandum of Understanding as well. So people could have greater variety in choice, and I think that has definitely impacted us. What we've also seen is a move towards project work. So where there was an increase of work throughout COVID, particularly for legal services and children's services, as well as adults, a lot of people then needed to fly in project teams to do critical backlogs, and that is a higher rate of pay than what's in the Memorandum of Agreement in terms of agency workers who are social workers. So I think there's been a number of things, but the unpredictability around that market move was something we probably didn't prepare for or didn't understand until it hit us at that particular point. So that's definitely had a contributing factor, but wouldn't necessarily say it's completely all of it. In terms of short-term and long-term, the majority are short-term placements, so they are covering establishment posts, and those numbers within children, adults and legal are majority establishment posts. The other 39 are a mixture. So if I give you an example, we've got a couple of projects on at the moment whereby we needed specialist skills to come in, do a project and be released, and we don't have the skills internally and we don't need the skills moving forward. But another example within my own team is my payroll. So somebody left, I went to market, it was a failed campaign, I had no succession in place, so I had to go for a locum to cover that period while I regraded that job and went back out to market. So that's like a 5-month window where somebody had to come in and run that payroll for me. So there's quite a mix within the 39. In terms of linking into your apprenticeship question, we have an apprenticeship academy, which is a successful academy. We bring apprentices together and we're constantly looking at the point where they qualify within 80% roles that are available across the council, and we spread those roles to make sure they get first opportunity to them. In terms of that succession planning onward, that's where the Medpay review comes in. So we don't have, under the legacy of Medpay as it was, great succession because it's limitations in terms of how you can progress with us. The Medpay review gives you that progression and that career route all the way through that profession that you choose. So we're kind of working on two things that's going to enhance and increase that. But the Apprenticeship Academy, in its own self, is very good at identifying when people are 80% completion and the fact then that they can start moving into our range 2 jobs. And we do that skills analysis to make sure those jobs are available for people. I think that was all your questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I'm just really pleased to hear that you're trying to keep the skilled staff here in Medway. That's good news. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lorella Printer, for your question. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Chair. 5.3 talks about the outcomes of staff exit surveys. I'm just wondering what we've done to challenge some of those either incorrect perceptions or what action we've actually taken to listen to staff and take on board what they're saying. I'm just wondering how often you publish the exit surveys. Is that something that can come back regularly here, even if it's just for an information item so we can stay on top of what staff are saying? Because the turnover rate of 23% is quite horrendous. I think picking up Councillor Prentice's point about we spend a lot of money investing in skills and in people, and then 23% of them sort of leave. I was just wondering what the actual vacancy rate is on permanent staff. I couldn't find that number in the report. You note a change in the workforce strategy. I'm just wondering when that occurred and what's the impact of it been. Picking up Councillor Prentice's point about apprenticeships, I'm just wondering are there any other routes into social work other than university and training, like, for example, degree-level apprenticeships? Is that something we've looked at? Just finally, I think I've asked this question before about productivity. With so many people working from home, how are we making sure that staff are as productive as they were before the working from home culture sort of became very embedded in the organisation? Thanks, Chair.
Over to you, Sam.
Thank you. So exit surveys, we do publish the data where it's requested. So previously it has gone, for example, to Children's Overview and Scrutiny around that. We also, where we've got particular retention and recruitment issues, we do stay interviews as well to find out why people are staying, and that often is the tool we use to really look at what is a perception, what is a feeling, and what is the reality. We've done a lot of work around our employee value proposition, whereby we've tested everything that we've got to offer individuals in terms of us being an employer of choice, and we did test that through the staff survey. And we were really pleased to see it came out quite favourably. I think most definitely one of the key areas is around pay, and that's why the Medpay review was commissioned in terms of us reviewing how we keep people here, but not just what people are being paid now, but it was the lack of career progression that people could get to. So we couldn't move people with outside of the cost of living before, in terms of them developing within their band. So if they've been with us for 2 years and somebody came in brand new, they would be on very similar pay. And I think that really did create an issue with us in terms of our own staff who have been here for a longer period feeling valued. And that seems to be one of the key features. So again, the Medpay review is addressing those issues. We have something called the Medway Makers, which is a collection of individuals across Medway that come together to share with us in the sense of kind of what the feeling is within the organisation. It's a really proactive group, and they help us work on what the communications need to be and what we need to do more of in terms of how people are feeling. So we use those as a critical area. And again, coming out of the staff survey, there's been a new communication engagement plan that has been formulated, and some of that has been focused around senior leaders and visibility. So our new chief executive, for example, is doing a bit of a tour at the moment and going into teams and talking to teams and having the opportunity for them to ask questions to him to give reassurance about what our future looks like, the things that we're trying to achieve. And that is also then replicated through into the directorates with directors and assistant directors. So we're trying to make sure that communication, that two-way communication, is stronger and better, which enables those honest conversations. And I think that's one of the main things that we're doing around that. I don't have the overall vacancy rate with me today, and I wouldn't like to guess what that is. I can certainly share that outside of committee. We are working on a very high turnover across the council. That has been something that has been happening for quite a while now. And again, within the staff survey results, the prediction of how many people were going to leave within 18 months was quite high. And as a result of that, we've increased the team that are delivering the Medpay review so that we can do it quicker and sooner. So we're responding to again, what the organisation is saying that we need to do. The workforce strategy, in particular, there's one for each of the areas. So we're working on one at the moment for adults, but the one for children's has been in place since the beginning of the improvement journey, and that has just been reviewed in terms of us now looking at, for example, international recruitment. So we've done that at the beginning of the improvement journey. It was quite difficult to do with the high volume of turnover we had in the system in terms of supporting people, and we learned a lot from that around some of the cultural issues, but we feel that we're in a stronger position now and we want to relook at that. So we've introduced some new stuff around that. In terms of apprenticeships, we do a lot of internal apprenticeships that are at high level, so we try to retain staff through training within the apprenticeships and make sure there's career progression for them. Children's is the only area that does have incremental pay and career progression already in place, and that was partly a testing mechanism against the improvement journey. So they're in probably a slightly more fortunate position, albeit it does need to be reviewed. And we do the NQSWs and the step-up students, so we do work as much as we can in terms of how many we can take in and support, as well as managing the day job. And part of the locum numbers there are, in terms of us taking on more NQSWs, we retained some of our locums to make sure there was mentoring in place so that those people then got the best support whilst they were with us and therefore stayed. So again, some of that locum push we did extend so that the mentoring was there because the caseloads were so high at the time and we had unfilled vacancies. Productivity, you're right, we have had a couple of questions around productivity before. In some areas of the council, it's easy to measure because the systems are there, and it makes it really easy to measure whether somebody's sitting in Gunwharf, in Broadside, or at home. And I think that is a clear area, and legal is one of those areas, particularly where we've got shared services. We justify that kind of work across the piece. Where probably it's not so easy is people that are on frontline services, and depending on the volume of customers coming through the door and so forth. The service managers, in their response within the survey, said they felt productivity and achievement was higher because people were generally more engaged and more happy about the work-life balance. It is very general. We don't tend to use any of our I suppose even within Microsoft Office, you've got software that will tell you how long somebody's been collaborating, how long someone's been in meetings. That is there for individuals, and it's for them to discuss with their managers, but we don't use it as a monitoring tool as an organisation. If there is a concern that's raised around perhaps productivity or performance or capability, then we have enough space in Gunwharf that people can come in and improvement plans and support plans are put in place. So managers are well versed on that. And we haven't necessarily made a big push to anybody being a permanent home worker, and that is largely because of the churn of new people we've got coming through the organisation. We've got to have a presence whereby we're inducting them properly and they're getting to know everybody within the workforce. So on large, I would say individual managers manage productivity in their service area, and we would support them if there was any concerns.
You want to come back, Councillor
Yeah, just
Lawrence?
very quickly. Thank you so much for that answer. Can I just push you a little bit on 5.3? Because I think in a lot of public sector organisations, culture is the big problem. In the NHS, my wife works in the NHS, and culture is a massive problem in terms of how people feel valued, how they get treated. The working from home is just another added. You've talked about two-way communication. I think that's extremely important. I would personally champion making sure staff who are delivering services are driving some of the agenda for change rather than officers who might have not actually done the day-to-day job for some years. But what are we doing to change the culture? If staff and people who are exiting the organisation are saying culture is a problem, what specific actions are we taking to change the culture, or at least understand what the cultural issue might be?
So I wouldn't necessarily say from the staff exit interviews people are saying culture is an issue. I think that's the main thing. I think it's more around our processes that are in place around that kind of largely being pay and progressional through in their careers that they've got with us. That is one of the big ones that come out as opposed to culture. In terms of culture, we hear a lot within HR around what's going on in the organisation. Obviously, we get lots of cases come forward, whether that's individuals or actually being disciplinary or grievance cases. And I think that gives us a lot of insight into how the organisation is performing and where there might be pockets of concern. Now, one of the areas that we've started to work on more recently, and this has been through engagement and listening to people, is around our diversity, equality and inclusion strategy. We haven't had one in place for a long period now, although we've had an equality board that has been established. And certainly feedback from staff, they felt that as an organisation this wasn't a very important subject matter. And they wanted to do more around it. So we've been working with public health on something called Turning the Tide, which is familiar with the NHS, around ethnicity and inequalities. And we are now at the moment looking at our own data, but as well as doing our data, we're doing a lot of engagement with staff whereby we're looking at perception and feeling before we determine exactly what we're going to do around this subject matter. So if anything's pressing at the moment, I would say that's probably more the cultural element that we're dealing with. But we want to know how people are feeling as opposed to just what the data's saying. It's not a numbers game for us. This is about how people feel. And that is our big area at the moment, which we are addressing.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Colvin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sam, for your report. In section 6, which deals with adult social care, I notice all the information there as far as the post field, etc., is all the national picture. I wondered if we could have as an advice note what the situation is here in Medway as far as adult social care is concerned. So that's my first point. Perhaps if the Vice Chair could take that up in the recommendations, please. I notice in section 7.5, there's mentioned there that 5.1 full-time equivalent agency lawyers have been had their contracts terminated. Whilst I accept that there's difficult decisions to be made, but every decision has consequences. And I'd like to know what the consequences of doing this are. First of all, I'd like to know what is the split between the people and the place team for those posts going. And as far as the people team is concerned, I'd like to know how that will affect the 26-week CAFCAS target. Whilst our CAFCAS target is not an outlier, last time I had access to the figures, I think we were at 34 or 35 weeks, something like that. But so we weren't too much, and there were some considerably more. But that has implications for children going through the courts, and if that figure is time is increased, we have had cases in the past where the local head of the judiciary who deals with children's matters has actually hauled the council over the coals. So I'd like to know what the situation there. And as far as the effect on the place team is concerned, I'd like to know how this will affect our shared legal service with Gravesham, please.
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Sam, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of those that were released, it was 1 litigation lawyer, 1 property lawyer, 3 childcare lawyers and 1 procurement officer. Now, Bhupinder is working with the directors of those areas that might be impacted around prioritisation of work. A message was given to all of corporate management team to look at our pool upon legal services, even in terms of employment law, for example, and looking at what we need to be doing and how we need to prioritise it. There was a commitment given that if there is a noticeable difference, that there will be action taken. I'm afraid I don't have the details to whether there's been an adverse impact around that. That was something that was probably now about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I'm sure conversations are ongoing, but I haven't personally heard anything of there being an issue at this time. But it was noted that Bhupinder would be working with the directors to keep an eye on the impact of this.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Councillor?
Yes, I would. And therefore, can we have a briefing note, please, on the effects on the CAFCAS figures and the shared legal service Gravesend integration to circulate among the whole committee, please?
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Did you capture that, Vice Chair? Sorry, do you want to come back?
So what I'm asking for is the effect on the people team on the 26-week CAFCAS target, which is supposed to be 26 weeks. How is that being affected? And as far as the place team is concerned, how that will affect our shared legal service with Gravesham.
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. A couple of questions, Sam. So if I might start by saying the charge for agency consultants is extremely high, and if you just do the reverse maths for social workers, I mean, they're all being paid at least £300 a day on average, which is, and probably more, which is quite expensive. I'd like to be clear exactly what's included in that £300. Are we paying holiday pay on top of that? Are we paying pension contributions? Are we paying all sorts of other things? Or is that just the daily rate and everything else is picked up by the agency? You mentioned in 5.1 that there's social workers directly employed by Medway is 187. It's a strange wording, directly employed by Medway. Does that mean that there is other social workers that are employed that are not directly employed by Medway? I'd just like some clarification in that, so understand the figure. I understand why we've got so many sort of agency social workers. We were on the naughty step, I think, as the previous chief executive used to coin it with children's social work. We're not on that naughty step anymore. And I've worked in my career in lots of projects that I was drafted in to help in crisis. We were in crisis. We've paid, and you throw money in a crisis to solve a problem. That problem is now over, and we now must put in place plans to stop throwing money at it and actually start to manage it properly. So could we have some outline of what plans we're doing to restructure children's social services now that we're in a good place and we don't have to throw so much money at it? Because I'm really worried about it just carries on in the way it was in the past when we were on the naughty step. In the table also in 5.1, it's not very good reading to see that Medway is so far above both England and the South East in the vacancy rate. Why do we believe Medway is so unique compared with the South East for vacancies compared with the others? Is it just down to pay and MedPay, or is there something else? Moving on to 5.3, you might have to refresh my memory here, but I thought that we paid or were approved to spend something like £2 million on new software for social workers towards the end of last year. So that the mosaic issue wouldn't be an issue anymore. Can I have an update on where we are with that software? Because from memory, it was about 12 months ago that I think the Cabinet approved the new software, and 12 months in, for delivering software, it should be either here or thereabouts. So I'd like an update on that. And moving on to 5.4, 4, the number of apprentices that we got in 5.5. I think 4 for social work is an extremely low number. When we have nearly 200 children's social workers, you know, we're only talking about 2% apprentices. I mean, back in the day in the industry, in here in the dockyard, they used to take on nearly 100 apprentices a year. You know, I appreciate that's across all crafts, and there was 10,000 people employed. But you know, when we've got a problem with social workers and we're trying to grow our own, I think 4 is a really, really low number, and we should be looking to increase that. So I'd like to know what our plans are to increase apprentices within in social work. And just finally, on the 8.1, you mentioned the end date of contractors within 18 months. I mean, if that was true, that would mean we would have no contractors here in 18 months. I'd like to know how many contractors get to the end of their contract and we renew it for another year or 2 months or 3 months or whatever. It would be an interesting read, because it's easy to say everybody's contract expires in 18 months, but if they expire next week and you employ them again for another year, it's a nonsensical statement. So I'd like to dig into some detail for that, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hockwell. Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully I've captured your points, Councillor Hackwell. So in terms of the agency workers and the rates being very high and what that's made up with, ultimately they're day rates, and it's a markup cost to the agency for them supplying them to us. So that's typically what it is in terms of the makeup of the cost for agency workers. The directly employed reference is those that are directly employed with us from an agency. We do have other people with us, particularly in children's services, that came in to do project work, and they're project teams. So we purchase a service, and therefore then there will be a collection of people that come with that service rather than us employing individuals. And that is normally to fix a backlog in a particular area, as opposed to filling establishment posts that we don't have people on. In terms of the working on lots of projects, our battle, particularly in children's, hasn't been about projects. It's generally been around us not being able to sustain the workforce that we have. So we do have recruitment, we do have people coming in. I can't remember the exact figure, but roughly for the last quarter, we would have onboarded about 40 people, but probably would have lost about 42. So we're forever not hitting into the gap that we've got in terms of those unfilled vacancies, because we're losing people as quick as we're bringing people in. And that's where our focus is at the moment. So I appreciate whilst we was on the naughty step and the project teams actually were what we needed because of our unfilled posts, the project teams will not be with us beyond January, but we will still need to constantly keep that establishment going and make sure that those posts are filled so there isn't caseloads that are not covered or the caseloads are too high. So that is going to be an ongoing challenge for us. And within the paper, there's a number of things that we are doing around the conversions of locums into permanent placements, the international recruitment that we're looking at, as well as then the restructuring discussions. The director is looking at the whole business area that sits under Leanne. I couldn't share this evening what that looks like. It would be unfair in terms of anybody having any consultation around any moves that might be happening. But I think it's fair to say across Medway, with our financial situation, all service areas are looking at what they can do differently, and that is ongoing. The vacancy rate is very high. Why is it so unique to Medway? I wouldn't say necessarily now with particularly children's it's based on pay, because you will recall from last year we done a lot of work in terms of our retention payments for social workers to retain people, to make sure we are competitive within the market and for those around us. You know, I'm not a social worker. I didn't work in children under the pressure of the inspection, but I would imagine that the pressure was pretty high. And I imagine people would go to other areas if there were vacancies that might be easier because the caseload numbers are less. You've got to recall Kent County Council was right on our doorstep. They got an outstanding judgment, and that's direct competition to us who are sitting with an inadequate. So, you know, I think it opens up choice for people. And, you know, we've done a lot of work internally around engagement. Children's Services in particular have an engagement group, and they come along and they present to members, to partners, and to senior leaders within Medway what people are feeling and what people are thinking. So, again, engagement is really high within the service, and whatever's been being shared with us, we are responding to. And I think you would have seen a lot of that happening throughout the year last year. But we do need to stop people leaving. That is absolutely key, and that's going to remain a challenge for us. The Mosaic, you're absolutely correct. There was an investment into Mosaic, largely because the system wasn't operating how we needed it to, in terms of it being efficient for us against what we were recording. And I think there was some backing of that where other councils have used it and identified the same issue. I would have to come back to you outside of committee as to where that project is. I know it's on. I know it started. It could well be finished. I haven't heard it's not, but I wouldn't like to say that it's completely finished. So if that's okay, I'll come back out of committee. Apprentices, the 4 is low, and we have had a debate around the frequency of the 4 joining the service. But whilst we're sitting with unfilled posts and project teams, it's going to be very difficult for us to onboard apprentices and support them well enough. So that number would increase around our glide path of when that permanent workforce becomes more sustainable. But at the moment, across apprentices, NQSW, step-up students, as well as an international recruitment campaign, we've got to be mindful of what the service can absorb whilst managing that day job. So we can't put too much pressure on that in terms of people then wanting to stay at Medway because they've been brought in properly and supported properly. So I don't think anybody would disagree that it's a low number, but I think we're managing what we can manage at this time given the kind of vulnerability within the workforce still that we're currently trying to deal with. And in terms of consultants who come to an end of contract and are re-engaged, again, I wouldn't have that figure for you. We could absolutely go away and have a look where that has occurred and what that looks like. Most definitely those that I know of, and I don't know every consultant individually, but I do know of the contracts on some of those. And there is a fair number that do tend to come to an end at the end of the year, and that's largely because they are funded by grant funding money. For particular project pieces. Now, we wouldn't be able to absorb that cost. So 9 times out of 10, those contracts will come to the end when the funding ends. But, of course, we can just have a look at that and test that.
Thank you. We'd like to come back to this.
Thank you for that, Sam. You mentioned a couple of times international recruitment. Now, I remember about 4 years ago, we had the same rhetoric. And we went out to South Africa, and if I remember, we recruited a dozen social workers. I don't think any of those are still here, if any, or maybe a small number. So what lessons did we learn from the last time we went out to international recruitment, and what are we going to do differently this time? Because it's not the answer that we think it is, or it didn't prove to be last time.
Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So we do still have some with us, not all. The whole cohort didn't say. Lessons learned was most definitely culturally, we probably didn't tap into the community enough to make sure that they had enough support around them. In terms of being away from their family. COVID didn't help us because they couldn't travel home and they couldn't visit family, and that left a lot of people quite isolated, and that was probably our biggest lesson learned around that. So at the moment we're scoping whereby there's already active community support groups so that we can make sure we're linking in with people so they can be supported, and really just making sure that when we're going to be recruiting people, they're coming in and being looked after completely within their social aspect, not just the work aspect, and that's probably where we didn't get it quite right last time. So that I would say is the biggest lesson learned. So we don't know at the moment where we're going to be approaching for our recruitment because that's all part of the scoping element that we're doing at the moment.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Crozer.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Sam, for the report. I just wondered whether you could just do a little bit more explanation around the difference in the perception of what an agency worker gets and what permanent staff.
Sorry, Councillor Crozer, can you speak a little louder? They don't hear you.
It's unusual for me not to be heard, I'm sure. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Sam, for the report. And I just wondered whether you could just delve in a little bit more for my explanation. The difference, the perceived difference between agency staff money and full-time money. I know I used to run an employment agency for a long time, and agency staff, we paid our guys, or the perception was that we paid our guys more than they got from their employer. So is the cost difference, do agency staff, are they employed by the agency or are they subcontracted by the agency? And when we compare those costs, are we uplifting the costs that we're actually paying our agency staff to compare the actual cost of what it is with the agency staff? And what is that difference? Because I've been speaking to one or two of the agencies that that we use, and I was really surprised to hear that the uplift they put on is not as much as it used to be. It's quite a small percentage now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so within, we have something called a dynamic purchasing system that is where we largely bring in our locum workforce. Now, we tend to apply a charge rate for them to purchase within that dynamic purchasing system, and the markup cost then of what they charge us is restricted by the Memorandum of Understanding. So for social workers, we've got the South East Memorandum of Understanding, which means we can only go to a certain point in terms of what we're willing to pay so that we don't competitively go against each other. Now, you can go above that in certain cases. So if you've got mitigation and you feed that in, you can go above that. We haven't done that, and that's why we moved to project team. So as a council, we've adhered to the Memorandum of Understanding, and that caps what a social worker can earn. So in terms of perception, I think people are quite well versed in what that Memorandum of Understanding is, because it's probably held us back at points when we've really needed to attract agency staff and haven't been able to with an inadequate status. But most definitely we push very hard, particularly when we're doing the the temp to perm conversion stuff around the added benefits of being a permanent employee. So sick pay, pensions, that all goes into that overall benefited cost, and we try and mitigate some of those perceptions through the additional benefits that are available to people. Agencies are not putting a huge markup on it. I think the market is too competitive, and most definitely as a local authority, where I think when we was with Kindy before, who had our temp recruitment agency, it was a flat 3%. We have to be very flexible in that now. We can't just say it's a flat 3% because of that market and the pool that we need to get. So if an agency has quality candidates, then we're going to want to work with them as quickly as we can, and it's not seen as an income generator in that regard anymore.
Can I come back?
Thank you, Sam. Would you like to come back?
I think, Sam, it's more around it's more around the way that the full-time staff see what the agency people are getting. They're getting more money than we are, so we're going to move elsewhere. Are you explaining that situation to them adequately? Because the agency staff probably not getting that much more than permanent, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Councillor Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So they are getting more than our permanent staff. Because of the Memorandum of Understanding, that is visible to everybody. And that's why we push on the fact that with our benefits, the pension and the sick pay, etc., and the annual leave that you get, is an added benefit to that. It's a cost benefit that's not in a salary. So in terms of that engagement, that's been quite critical. And again, that's one of our selling points when we're trying to do the temp to perm event. And our permanent members of staff would also be there selling that as a benefit as well. Are people happy with the volume of agency workers that we have and the pay and the perception of that? I would probably say no. It's always the case, isn't it, when there's an agency worker and you've got a permanent loyal workforce, that there might be a higher perception. But we are definitely trying to manage that as well we can. I think the bigger risk is when we bring project teams in, because they then are higher than agency workers and your permanent workforce. And I think that has probably been the hardest point for us to sell with the permanent workforce, when we had to do that and the rationale behind it. But it is about that two-way transparency around that communication, and Donna, being the assistant director, is very much involved directly with those conversations and managing that feedback that's coming from the teams. The heads of service are amazing. We've done a session with the agency people only a couple of weeks ago in Broadside around us wanting to get a permanent workforce and how the agencies can help us get a permanent workforce, not just a temporary workforce. And it really did build up some amazing relationships, because I think they are able to really explain the benefits of why being a permanent member of staff is an attraction. So I think across the senior leadership arm, particularly in children's, it's very well versed and is said at every opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Prenter.
Thank you, Sam. It's interesting you're talking about the pay not being that much difference, because there is a running joke from social workers I speak to. You can tell which cars are the agency staff in the car park because they're all the flashy, expensive ones. So there's certainly a perception amongst staff that they're paid exceedingly better. Under 5.3, it states that one of the reasons quoted by staff who leave Medway is unsupportive managers. What is being done to address this? And further, I've heard this more than once, that even if you need one member of staff from an agency, they make you take on more than a whole team. Is that correct, or is that being misquoted? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prada. Sam, would you like to respond?
So unsupported managers, we were in a position where we didn't have permanent appointments at manager level, and I think that did hinder us. We now have permanent appointments at manager level, and I would say some of the unsupported management comments might have been whereby we needed to drive out some poor practice and poor performance. So there was definitely a drive with a lot of people opting to leave, and they were the right people to leave the organisation in terms of the expectation and the standard that was placed upon them. So most definitely from Donna and the management team, there is a consistency of approach around how they're managing the workforce. We have a principal social worker in place who provides additional wellbeing support and pastoral support to individuals, and that's been a new addition, and she's very active in that space. So where people don't feel they could talk to their line manager or it's more wellbeing concerns, then she's very, very active in that particular space as well. So we watch the feedback from this and we see what happens, but I couldn't hand on heart say that we've got unsupported managers within the service at the moment. The other point around remind me of your second point, sorry.
The grouping, you can't just go to them and say we need one social worker or one person, you have to take on a whole team. Is that correct?
That's incorrect. So when we do our assignments for our dynamic purchasing system, we put vacancies out and agencies will respond to vacancies, and that could be 1 or it could be 5. Even within the project teams that we went out, we split that across 2 agencies. So when we needed approximately 20 people as a service, 2 agencies came forward with proposals and we split that between 2 agencies. So I wouldn't necessarily say that agencies have us to the point where they say you've got to take 5, not just 1. We will, just through nature of relationships and good placements, build up strong relationships with some agencies. And that was the point of us bringing all the agencies together on our dynamic purchasing system the other week in Broadside to talk to them about who we are and what we're trying to do, so we can make sure we've got those good relationships with everybody. So I don't see that, and I've not come across that, so I'd say that is incorrect.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sam, for the report. Actually, I think we need to be very heartened by the hard work that has gone into the preparation for getting us onto a new footing. We were on the naughty step, and I'll agree with Councillor Hackwell on that. But how did we get there? Let's not take the drains up on that one tonight. What we really need to do now is to celebrate where we're going with the plan. And I'm very heartened to see that you've got the right strands. You've got the cultural strand, the support strand, the management strand, and the pay strand. Unfortunately, the pay strand is going to be restrained, as always, for those of us who have always worked in the public sector, or even in the public and private sector, we understand that. But what I'm heartened is that when we went to health the other week, we found the assistant director very engaged, very on top of the whole staffing issue. And the other thing that I'd like to say is apprenticeships are fine in certain situations, but we are asking people to do really difficult professional jobs, and there is more than one entry level, and there's more than one level needed to do that. So I think what we need to start doing now is to maybe chunk it up a little bit and find out the questions, as some members have asked about, is to just see with the directors what is the top priority within the different directorates. And there will be some, because if I remember being told that we have had locums that have decided to become permanent members of staff, that's good practice. And that may be in another place. I understand that legal services are really looking at what they need. We've spent fortunes of money on the legal services at the moment, and now we need to start working on that. But I'm very heartened, actually, to know that you and the directors and the new chief executive have this as one of their top priorities. And the answers that you give us tonight, thank you very much for being as honest as you could be. But any briefing notes to come back to the whole of the committee, not just to one or two members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Sam, would you like to respond?
Just thank you for your support. It has been a tough market to work in, I think, and this is largely pushed by recruitment and retention issues for us in Medway. But nothing can be turned overnight. You know, we know we've got to go on a journey for this. We are working on footpaths around this in terms of what we're doing around the pay aspect. You know, pay is restrictive, but we can still get a better deal for our individuals and a better progression route for our individuals, which ultimately this is about. And when I say the Med Pay review, I do want to stress that is about career progression as well as just paying people more. You know, we're assessing what we've got. We're not underpaying in every area. It's more around the movement and the career progression and the professionalism that we need to display as an organisation. So we have full senior management commitment to that, and that is absolutely going to make a difference. So thank you for your comments and noted around briefings to all.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Some of my questions have been answered, so Sam, thank you as well for your responses. I think it's, as what Councillor Brown said, Chair, I think it's a good line in the sand. So the report is a starting block for us, really. So, you know, the information that we're requesting, Councillor Galvin's requesting further responses of, you know, I understand the CAFCAS stuff that you want, but anything of the changes over the last month, you're going to really want to wait a few months for that. You're not going to see changes in a month or 2 months. I think, you know, this sort of report is a good thing to come back in 6 months' time so we see where it's going. I wouldn't agree with regard to saying that we're out the woods, and Councillor Hackwell, you must be really happy that you now know how much agency staff are paid, because I thought you would have known that during your time when we had loads come in. But I don't think we're out the woods with children. We've got we're good, and it's a brilliant result, but we still need to invest in it to make sure that we stay there. And I think, you know, we should always have that in mind. And when you're cutting, you're right, well, you can't cut corners when it comes to our children or our vulnerable people. The Mosaic stuff, I'm really interested in that software stuff. I think that was a good question to ask. And I'm still not quite sure, Sam, and you might, you know, you said it out of committee, and I think it has to come back to committee chair about that. We have to know about it. It can't be out of committee. And I didn't know whether it's been written off or whether it's still ongoing, because I didn't, and maybe, Sam, it's because I was trying to write the questions. I didn't know where we are with that. My final point, I suppose, is around the unsupported supportive managers. That was something that, you know, we all went on about during the staff survey. And you would have probably seen the new staff survey results now, because I remember you were saying that was September time, I think, but you can answer any about it, September, October. And hopefully when that comes back, Chair, to committee, we might start seeing what the comments were on that and whether that's made a change. And if, sorry, Sam, if that was delayed a bit and it hasn't happened, hopefully we might see a bit of a change in that when it comes out. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my point around the challenge still with children's and the recruitment and the fragile workforce, you know, totally recognise that, and thank you for commenting that we've still got a way to go. We're not quite there. Apologies, Mosaic is the development within Mosaic's happening, but where it is on its journey in terms of getting to the end of where it needs to be, I couldn't comment on. So it's definitely not stopped and not happened. It is going ahead, and those I know changes have been made. So that's definitely something, because the staff forums have fed back that they're finding it better to engage with the system and it's easier to use. So that is ongoing. And again, apologies, but my out of committee probably meant out of this evening as opposed to out of committee. So yeah, that noted and absolutely heard. The unsupported managers in the staff survey, actually managers came up really highly in the staff survey as being very well received and people having great relationships with them. It was one of our positives that came out of the survey, which was really, really reassuring to see. Line managers are doing a tremendously great job. We've increased a lot of that engagement, and I don't know if you recall, we did say that we was going to do the survey in May, and this is because of the huge change that we're going through at the moment. Everything that was going on this year, to measure that when it's not very stable would have given us what we probably already know, and actually we want to see how far we got with the Med Pay review and whether that's embedded and whether it's working, as well as there being a change of administration as well as the chief executive. For an organisation, that is considerable. So what we're doing is engagement, which is face-to-face, lots of drop-in sessions, lots of communications with individuals so they can feed back. But the annual survey will be operating every May. So we did say that we'd probably bring that back to EMC, which I think was about July time, from memory.
Chair, can I just come back? So, sorry, you mean next May you're going to be doing it? Because
Yes.
then that means it'd be 2 years from the last one. Because remember my question about bringing the last one to committee, it was already a year out of date. So we're not doing it every year, then it's going to be 2 years. And sorry, just to follow on from that, Phil, could maybe you answer about the mosaic stuff? You must know about the mosaic, where we are with that, because it's a big investment, so maybe you'll be able to answer something on that after Sam answers the question about the staff survey.
Do you want to come in first, Sam?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it was one of the proposals we did put through EMC that we wanted to move the annual date to May. Now, we've done it in September, so it'd be 18 months as opposed to 2 years. And it was because of that volume of change. And because with the change, we did take longer to get those results out to people and do that engagement piece that we really wanted to do. So that was a commitment we made. We spoke to the organisation about it, we spoke to corporate management team, and we spoke to members to say, yeah, so it would be annually, but the anniversary date will be May rather than September. So, slightly pushed on 18 months, but absolutely we'll be doing it annually. And focusing on 5 things, because you'll recall it's a very long survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Phil, would you like to add to that?
Okay, so just to clarify, that mosaic work that we put in the capital programme, that was to facilitate rewriting a whole suite of reports so that we could, the data that was going in the system, we could get it out and use it. I'll be honest, I don't know where we are with that project, but I've made a note that I'm going to go and find out from the project lead how much of that, I think there was something like 40 odd reports or something that needed to be written, so I'll get you an update on where we are with that.
Thank you, Phil. Don't have any other member, so over to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation 1.1 at page 16, the committee note the report, and also further note a briefing note on the effects of CAFCAS and the 26-week effect on the legal team and effects on the project and the place team and its relationship with Gravesham. Further note as well an advice or briefing note on adult social care in Medway as per more specifically in relation to 6.1 and 6.2.
That brings us on to agenda item 6, which is the work program. Steve Dickens, of our Democratic Services Officer, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to draw members' attention to Section 6 of the work programme that relates to task group selection. So an informal meeting of the chairpersons, vice chairpersons and spokespersons of the Overview and Scrutiny committees took place on the 4th of October. They chose the shortlist in your pack for task groups and have asked that this meeting prioritise those tasks and choose, in particular, the first task group to take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any member? Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve. Take you to the recommendations 1.3. I have to say that the ratio that's proposed for the task group is totally unacceptable to the Conservative group, apart from if that's allowed to be for one. So I start again, right? Right. If you go to 1.3 of the recommendations, the ratios of membership for the task groups, I have to say that what's proposed there, if that is going to be for all 3 task groups for the year, is totally unacceptable as far as the Conservative group is concerned. I would suggest to keep it equitable, that would be suitable for 1 task group. The other 2 should be a ratio of 3 to 2. Otherwise, the Conservative group, which has 38% of the membership of the council, will only have the same representation on the task groups as the independent group that has 5% of the membership of the council. That is not equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garvin. Steve, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Govin. There was consultation that had taken place regarding this task group in terms of the first meeting. In terms of the political balance, the balance of 3, 1 and 1 is the same as took place in between the period of 2015 and 2019, when there were also 3 groups. So that's why the decision or the recommendation was made for it to be 3, 1 and 1 at the time.
Well, I find that unacceptable now. As I say, how can you have one group that has 5% of the membership of the council having the same representation on the task groups as a group that has 38%? That is just sheerly not right. It would work out better, as I said, if one task group went to that 3-1-1 ratio, but the others were 3-2. That would then work out a reasonable balance, because if you did it as a percentage of the 50, you know, if you divided the 15 members up, Labour would be entitled to 8.5, the Conservatives 5.7, and the Independent group only to 0.75. So even at 1, the Independent group will be getting more than their share. Labour at point will be still getting 0.5 more. The Conservative group will be severely underrepresented. That is not right.
Councillor MacDonald.
Chair, I'm a bit confused, and Councillor Galvin, maybe, you know, Steve has just told us about what it was previously. I think your issue is maybe, are you saying that you should be taking a seat of the independents, so you should be having 2 and independent have none then? Because
No.
you're actually focusing on something that has always been in there. The political balance is clear, and it was the same from 2015 to 2019. There's nothing different here apart from Labour having the majority and not the Conservatives. So I suppose the difference being is, I mean, from a joint task group point of view, for example, the air quality and regen, then obviously there would be a mix of the membership. So there would be the more Labour and double the Conservatives. Is that right? Because we were looking at two ONSs joining for one task group.
I want to clarify that, Steve.
In terms of the membership of a joint task group between air quality and public transport, I don't think we've made a decision, or there's been a decision on the membership of that number. What was suggested was that the membership for this task group would be 3, 1 and 1. I don't know if it sounded like...
I mean, I think,
yes,
you know, I've got to, you know, I probably will defend Councillor Govin on the issue of the two task groups joining. And I would certainly, as Chair of Health, I wouldn't want to, if you've got two ONSs joining together to look at two issues, then obviously you'd look at maybe increasing those number of what you had. You wouldn't be able to just have, because then everyone misses out on that. So I do agree on that element. However, I do understand our political balance. I think Councillor Galvin, Chair, might want to come back with the independent part, because that's what skewered your figures a bit, I think. But it was always the case. I've got to make it clear. It's always been the case where we have only had this political balance on the task group since 2015. It's never changed.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Galvin, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would. Say, if for the first one, if you keep the 3-1-1, but for the other 2 tasks, we're talking about having 3 in the year, aren't we? In the term. Yes. We're talking about having 3 task groups, aren't we? So in total, you'll need 15 members to supply those things. So if we have for the first one a ratio of 3-1-1, and for the other 2 task groups that follow a ratio of 3-2, that would be reasonably equitable. It would still leave an imbalance in that the Conservative group would be underrepresented in that, and the Independent group overrepresented, and Labour would also be overrepresented, but it would make the situation far more equitable.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Galvin knows this isn't a sparring match. Yeah, I'm one. But I suppose my issue is if the political balance is 3-1-1, you can't swap and change it as you go along. You wouldn't be able to. But what I was agreeing with you on is that, and I think it's something to take out of the meeting maybe, or something for Steve to go back on, Chair, is that if it was a joint ONS task group, two joining together looking at transport and air quality, then obviously you have more numbers from each of those committees. You wouldn't just have that minimal balance. But the balance, I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, where it says 3-1-1, it isn't just for the first, that's what you're talking about as the balance, right?
Do you want to come in, Steve?
Yes, so it is proposed that the balance be 3-1-1 for task groups. In terms of a joint task group, it's obviously not something that we've undertaken before. I think there is a question of the scope of the task group becoming too large and the logistics of having 10 members and being able to do that task group within the given time frame.
Councillor MacDonald.
So thanks very much for that, Steve. I appreciate that, and I know a joint task group is quite unusual, but from a balance point of view, and I'm talking about two ONSs here, not necessarily the political groups, you couldn't have more from one ONS than the other. If, for example, if Health and Regen are going together, you'd need a good balance of people from both of those groups. Otherwise, you're not looking at the task group jointly. You'd only have more Regen than Health or more Health than Regen. So maybe that's something to take from out here. But from the 3-1-1, I understand that. But I would agree if it was joining up, it would need to be looked at. It couldn't just be that. Because you're going to miss people out. You won't get a representation from the two ONSs.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Steve, will you come in before I come to you, Councillor Hackwell?
I would just say that I'd be happy to take that away, and we could have that discussion again.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Hackwell.
I wasn't here prior to 2019, and we only had two political groups in the last 4 years. Just because it happened before doesn't mean it was right. I wasn't here. Just because it happened before, but it doesn't appear right to me that the Labour group have only got sort of like a third more councillors than the Conservative group, yet they're getting 3 times as many. Yeah, but it's not an equitable majority, is it? The 3-1-1. It's still not an equitable majority. I don't, just because it was done in 2015 doesn't make it right.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. Councillor Crosser.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, we would be totally against that, because I'd like to be on those task groups, and I know my fellow councillors would like to be on some of those task groups. But I kind of pick up on Dan's point about if there's two task groups together, then as long as we're represented on each of the task groups, but it is being on the task groups where the work's done. So we absolutely want to be in there. And I would remind members that neither these committees or the task groups are whipped, I hope, although I think it goes on, to be honest. So I think it's quite important that you need to convince me, and so do these need to convince me of what the argument is to see where I vote, because I don't always vote with this side. In fact, I don't always sit on this side. I sit on your side sometimes as well. And I do agree with, there are more than, you know what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councillor Crosser. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Councillor Crosser. I mean, I was defending the independent on the focus group. So, and with regards to voting, I will say, even if Councillor Galvin and Councillor Hackwell think I'm having a go, I'm not, because even when I have been on previous task groups, even though there might have only been one seat or whatever, it's always been a very, very fair ending to all of those task groups. We've had other stuff before, and it's been a very agreed approach, which it should be in ONS. It should be approach from both sides about what the agreement, whether there's action taken after it, was always in the gift of the cabinet or gift in wherever it goes up to, and it wasn't, sometimes it was just a champion being formed or whatever, but I've always seen it a fair process when we actually go through, a task group. What I'm trying to say is, and Councillor Hackwell, it may not have been right, but it was forced on us for 4 years, whether it was right or wrong. the administration made sure they kept with what Democratic Services said was the correct numbers. And we had to work to that. Whether it was right or wrong, we had to work to it. And that's what I'm trying to say. But, you know, unless things change, it's not. But we are going to the numbers that are put out there. But I do believe the independent groups should be represented on those task groups.
Well, I would like to know where in the Constitution that ratio is set.
Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Govan, after you, we just want to adjourn for 5 minutes, if that's okay. Yeah. Members, we're just reconvening. We had to take a short break for Steve to check out the proportionality and check the points that have been raised by Councillor Galvin. So I will just get Steve to explain what he found out. Steve.
So thank you, Chair. Apologies for the delay. So if the committee would rather have a bigger membership to reflect more widely the representation, then that's up to the committee. What we've proposed is what's happened in the past, as I've explained. But if the committee wanted to have, say, for example, 6 members on the basis of 3, 2 and 1, then that would be up to the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
I'd like to propose that the ordinary one, not a joint one, should be 4-2-1. So that would still give the Labour group the casting vote, but it would be more equitable.
I'm coming to you. Is that a proposal? Okay. Thank you, sir. Councillor MacDonald.
Sorry, Chair, but it isn't good enough, right? This isn't a cattle market. This is a proper committee we're in tonight. Okay, these papers were checked by legal before they come here. Okay, it's written down. So if we're going to start changing all our numbers, then we take the paper off. You won't get your task group agreed, and you come back with proper detail in papers, right? I think it should be 3-1-1 because that is what was always proposed. And now we have a break in the meeting, go off, have some phone calls, change it, and come back and say, should we agree this? Not acceptable, Chair. Not acceptable, and it's not about making sure people have a seat. It's not about, I've already said that, it's not about that. But it's written down, the rules, and Phil, you can come back, but I'm not going to bounce back on it. The rules are very clear, and legal should check these papers before they come to committee, and shouldn't make recommendations if they then can be debated and negotiated and changed. As far as I'm concerned, I don't agree to the proposal, as far as I'm concerned, we should be sticking to the 3-1-1, because that's what's in the recommendation.
Well, I'd like to know where 3-1-1 is written down, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you. Phil, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you. So what Steve's gone and checked is constitutionally what it actually says. And actually, the reason I asked this question myself is if you look at Appendix 4, it says typically these scrutiny groups operate with 5. What Steve has just gone and checked is if the committee, and you've got to agree this collectively, we can't just do this, no one can do this unilaterally. If the committee agrees to change that, then it has the power to do that. That's what Steve's gone and checked for you. My reading of this now is that someone has proposed a change to those rules. It's for this committee to debate and either agree or not.
So, MacDonald, Councillor Lawrence was waiting to speak after.
Thank you, Chair. Give us a chance, Councillor MacDonald. There is a recommendation. This is a committee that can either agree a recommendation or amend the recommendation or not agree the recommendation. So we've made a proposal for a different split. Can we please take a vote on that proposal? Otherwise, we're going to be here all night. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald, what's your point of order?
Well, the point of order is Phil saying, you're right, Councillor, we can vote on it, but we're voting on a change that is not a recommendation in the paper. And the recommendation has always been set out, and until Councillor Galvin asked, that's always been, Councillor, I'm going to say that was always 215 to 219. No one challenged it because it was always, it's in the paper and that's it. What I'm trying to say is from a legal point of view, we've just scrapped all of that and changed it and come up with another. So does that mean when we have recommendations going forward from democratic services, we can wipe them out and change our mind and change it again? Is that what so with Phil asking me, saying to me that this is what's on the table now, this is what's written down, I was unaware that once they've been checked by legal that we can change everything and come back with a total different agreement. But okay, well, yeah, but there's legal rules, though. No, come on. You would be... Well, if it's democracy, 3-1-1 has always been in the papers. Your side have always seen that, Councillor Lawrence. We've never said, well, let's have more. Anyway, we can go to the vote. It's up to my side what they do, but I'm just saying I think it's a very poor show, Chair. With all due respect, it's a very poor show to have an adjournment just to try and get a better deal. It's not good enough, as far as I'm concerned. And we can take that out of committee, but let's vote on that proposal and see what happens.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. It wasn't to get a better deal. It was a democratic process. We were asking a question, a point was raised, a proposal was made, and the democratic officer went away to verify that proposal. Councillor Maritime.
No, he didn't.
The democratic officer, Steve, asked for adjournment because he wanted to get clarification. It wasn't any group who asked.
We're trying to debate a paper here. We've got recommendations in the paper. If there's going to be an amendment to a recommendation, it has to be a proper amendment. And it should have been in writing, and it should have been put out to us. Well, if you're not amending it, then we're voting on the recommendations and everything else.
Order through the chair, please.
Sorry, that is a point of order. The point of order is you either vote on the recommendations or you don't, and you haven't got anything else legally here in front of you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Maritime.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, on the subject of the combined committee, I certainly would be in favour for that, making it 6-2-2. But as has already been pointed out previously, we are talking about past examples have been 5. This is 3-1-1, and Councillor Gulvin has come to this committee and said 3-1-1 isn't acceptable. Well, I find it a bit strange. I certainly consult with my leader as group whip. In an email that I received from an officer on the 11th of October, I was told, this was sent to me and Councillor Sands as the independent group whips, that Councillor Kemp was content with 3-1-1. So what's changed in the intervening time, and why hasn't something come to the table in advance of this meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Maritime. Phil, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think so. I need to respond to the point of order that Councillor MacDonald raised. Steve has checked this out. That's why he was ringing. I think it was Wayne you spoke to, was it?
Sorry, I spoke to another officer within Democratic Services, okay. But I requested the adjournment to confirm the position if the committee were unhappy with 3-1-1. What was within the power of the committee. Now, it's within the gift of the committee how many numbers how many people they want to put on the task group. And it should be broadly proportional to the political balance. And
well, sorry, can I just finish then? So the recommendation I think that is at issue here is 1.3. The recommendation, and that's what it is. It's a recommendation. This committee has the scope to either accept or reject that recommendation. The recommendation is the committee is asked to agree the priority order of task group topics and to agree to the start of the first task group selected with a membership of 5 councillors. There's an alternative proposal on the table, which I think this committee is able to vote on. I don't think it's a point of order. These recommendations.
No. Sorry, Chair. Let me just go back. This isn't a big battle here, right? With you guys, that isn't. What I'm trying to say was, and with all due respect to the Chair and to Steve, the committee wasn't asked about the adjournment. There was a debate, and then we adjourned. So that's my issue, Phil. It isn't about whether Steve or the Chair, which he would always do, because he's a gentleman like that as a Chair, asked us, we're going to have adjournment. Is the committee content that the Democratic officer goes and rings somebody? We didn't get an agreement on that. That was that was agreed and then done without an agreement from this committee. That's my issue with the process. Secondly, Steve, again, with all due respect, he's a brilliant Democratic officer, so I want to make sure that's on the record. Steve said, as per normal in the past, it's always been the free one. It's been that way. So from our point of view, like we would always be picked up normally, that's a legally checked. That's the way it's always been. Whether Councillor Golvin's right, I'm going to say on this occasion, is that in the Constitution or not? Whatever, I'm going to say that because we always go by what's written on the papers as that is the process and that's the way it has to be. It doesn't say committee, you've got a choice. If you want to change the numbers, you can. It doesn't say that in the paper. So I'm just responding to my point of order. There was no disrespect to officers or to the chair or you two, but it wasn't a committee-involved decision about adjourning.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Galvin.
I find it rather strange that we're sitting here saying that we've either got to accept or reject an officer's recommendation. I find that quite incredible.
My point of order...
That is not what members are for. Members are fully...
One member, please, through the chair. Councillor Brown.
Members are fully entitled...
Yeah.
Can somebody correct me or not? My understanding is, as I've been a councillor, this is my 13th year on this authority, that members have the right, by a majority vote, to amend or change officers' recommendations. We are not here just to rubber stamp officers to say yay or nay to officers' recommendation. Officers, yes, are here to advise, but it's members that decide.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Do we have any? Councillor Jones.
Chair, I suggest we move to the vote. Personally, I'm not bothered. My colleagues might be, but personally, I'm not bothered whether we vote on Councillor Galvin's proposal or whether we vote on the original recommendation. I prefer to vote on the original recommendation from officers. But whichever way we do it, Chair, I think we should now go to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yeah. Councillor Maritime.
I'd just like to ask another question again. Councillor Galvin, you've come here proposing that you want something other than 311. Why is it on the 11th of October your own whip told an officer that who then in turn told me and Councillor Sands that you were happy with 311. What has changed your mind in the intervening period?
I was not privy to that conversation. I'm privy to the papers that we are dealing with what is happening tonight, not what's happened in the past.
Might I suggest that in future it might be better for your group if perhaps the chief whip and the leader start speaking to each other.
Thank you. So we are going to the vote on the recommendation, the proposal.
No, that's not what you said. What are we going to vote on?
Also, the proposal to amend.
The amendment?
Yes.
The ratio for a standard task group, not a joint cross scrutiny committee task force, be 4-to-1.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Yeah, that's the vote, yeah. Who's for or against? Yeah. Against? So that vote is lost. To the Vice Chair. For the original proposal.
Sorry. So we can continue. We can vote on the membership, having just voted on the amendment, or we can discuss the priorities, and then obviously the priorities and the membership are all part of 1.3.
Okay, yeah, just let's go on the order first, the order of...
Point of order, please. I can't hear what Steve's saying, and I think it's quite important for me to hear that.
Sorry, Councillor Crozer. So 1.3, the recommendation, was to decide the priority order for the task groups, and with the membership of 5 councillors, 3, 1 and 1. So there was an amendment to 1.3, which has not passed. If the proposal is to vote on 1.3, we would first need to discuss the priority order of the task group.
So do we have any proposal on the priority? Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I would propose that air quality and public transport and active travel goes first, and then any of them after that.
Councillor Lawrence.
Can I second that proposal? Somebody needs to second it.
Thank you. Councillor.
I've got a particular interest in Medway 2.0, and if you read the papers, we need to start Medway 2.0. I'm not quite sure why we can't run parallel task groups, personally. It seems a bit odd that we want to spread this out over the years, unless it's an issue of officer time and capacity. But for me, 2.0 is where the future is. Councillor MacDonald, you and I think, agreed that we know where air quality is going to go. We've got terrible air quality. It's going to be no useful outcomes other than the fact we've got terrible air quality. Medway 2.0 is a really important part of the future of the way the council designs its services and delivers those services, and I would recommend that we push forward with Medway 2.0 first.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor MacDonald.
I'm not going to totally disagree, but I think it would be about officer time to try and do the both at the same time. But I think we can't judge where air quality is going to end up. And from me as Chair of Health, an overview, I'm going to say that when you've got a hospital full up to the brim with people with respiratory illness, which it is, well, it is. I'm sorry, Councillor Lawrence, but you know we have a real poor factor of that here in Medway. So from me, and it's not only air quality, it's also the active travel stuff as well that we need to know about. So there's already a group talking actively about the Medway proposal, so it's ongoing at the time. So there is a group working to that. I know that was a recommendation in the paper about it would make sense for it to go further, but I'm still going to go with the air quality in the other one. That's my proposal. It's not. I'm just one out of all committee.
But can you send me the stats on the hospital thing? If that's true, then that's, you know, and I'm not doubting it isn't, but I'd like to see the stats on that.
Of course, and also the focus group will give you even more detail once it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Hackwell.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lawrence, actually. I think Medway 2.0 is very important for this council. I mean, we have a myriad of systems that actually don't talk to each other. They don't work very well. And as a consequence, we can't do very much as a council very efficiently. We have been working on active travel in the past. We've been working on things like with the air quality through the other committee that we have, and nothing has moved really in 2 or 3 years. So whereas Medway 2.0 is really important to get this council moving in a way. So you know, I appreciate I've got a different opinion to yourself, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. Councillor Goldwyn.
I'd like to ask Mr. Watts, please, is it true that the Transformation Board has been abolished?
Yes, the Transformation Board, in the format that it was running prior to the election, no longer exists. The new administration wanted transformation to be brought to the forefront, and that future reports and initiatives be brought to Cabinet.
Well, I find that extraordinary. The Transformation Board, up to the end of the last financial year, had permanently taken £12 million out of the council's budget, which has made a huge contribution towards balancing the budget. That was the format that Medway 2.0 was being steered through the council. You know, not to have a board that had the power that the Transformation Board had to drive these things forward, I find absolutely extraordinary. So in that case, I would say that the task group looking at Medway 2.0 is even more critical, given the financial state of the council. So if on the Labour side, if they want to say that the council's imminently tipping on the brink to get projects like Medway 2.0 to the fore, is critical.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I accept the Labour Group have got their political priorities, and air quality and active travel and anti-car is definitely one of your political priorities. I absolutely understand it. But Councillor MacDonald,
hang on a minute.
Councillor MacDonald, sorry, I haven't...
Point of order.
No. Come on, Councillor Lawrence, take that last comment back, because I'm not anti-car at all. So don't be saying I'm anti-car. I'm talking about air quality and people's health here and transport strategy. So come on, I haven't gone for you. So take that last comment back about being, that's why I'm trying to push it to get everyone not into cars here. I'm not anti-car, right?
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Okay.
Councillor
Thank you. The problem is a lot of your policies are against car use. I'll use that terminology. Okay. Every single time Councillor Curry stands up or Councillor Maple stands up, it's not, it's against car. I wrote to both you and Councillor Myton to invite you to the session that I'd organised with the IT services team, and neither of you bothered to respond to my emails.
Sorry, Councillor
Lawrence. Point of order.
I'm sorry, Councillor Lawrence, but I was in hospital. Admitted to hospital, unwell. So I'm sorry I didn't come to your meeting, but I had other priorities in Medway Hospital at the time. And I think that's more important than you throwing accusations about not attending an IT meeting, okay?
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor MacDonald, I didn't know you were in hospital. Right, but Councillor Myton didn't respond either. But if you'd have come to that meeting, if you were able to have come to that meeting, what you would have seen is exactly what Councillor Hackall said. The council is working on 44 different systems, right, most of them which don't talk to each other. An enormous amount of officer time is being spent pulling together data across the council. When you see that service, we've only got 4 programmers working on the transformation of the council's online systems. Okay, that is the opportunity for saving and better processes and better customer service for our taxpayers is enormous. Okay, and it's something that we can actually influence now. I agree air quality is an issue. Okay, but you're not going to change anything from your focus group, right? It's a massive problem. It's a regional problem. It's a national problem. Okay, so Medway 2.0 is where we can have the most influence on transforming services across the council.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, my question is actually for Phil Watts. Medway 2.0, I understand, is one of the transformations that everybody's hoping is going to make delivery at Medway Council better. At the moment, I understand that there is a lead officer, like an officer, not a member, for transformation, and that there is a programme for this transformation. So why are we arguing tonight something that's actually internal and working? And even Councillor Lawrence is telling us that there's 4 programmers working on it. So why are we asking to have a task group on something that actually should be led by senior officers and is being led by senior officers?
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Phil, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think that it's a case that the idea is being taken forward. My business change team is leading on it. Paul Boyd is the officer that's leading on Medway 2.0. The concept of it is that rather than trying to engineer all of our existing systems and transform those, we start with a blank piece of paper, Medway 2.0. So that's the idea. This was put forward as a task group option because we felt that engagement with members about what it looks like and the services that we want run through it, it would benefit from that member engagement. And actually, because it is a programme of work that's already started, personally, and I didn't want to get involved in this because I think it's for members to come to this conclusion, but personally, I would favour it being quite early in the programme of task groups, but that is a personal opinion.
Thank you very much. That does bear in mind what I was suggesting, that we are some way down the road with this, and I'm not objecting to it at all. All I'm saying is it shouldn't be the first one.
Chair, just Just pick up, and I promise to be quiet. Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Luella Prenter, then you, Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Councillor Brown said, in that no one's saying it's not going to be addressed and it's not in the order. It's just that there already is an officer and a team working on it. So air quality is really imperative to the people of Medway. So there's nothing to say Medway 2.0 isn't going to be second. It's not to say it's not, you're not saying it's not happening, it's just it doesn't have to be first because people are already working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hubbard.
I'm not sure if Mr. Watts is aware that we, as a Labour group, had a full presentation about Medway 2.0 very early on, just after the election. And I have every confidence with the officer team that they will take it forward. The only problem I had when the intelligence was put in, it came up with the deputy leader still as Councillor Doe. But apart from that, it was very good. So I think it's well advanced. The task team will probably slow it down. So I support the proposal put by Councillor Dan MacDonald.
Thank you, Councillor Hubbard. Councillor Lawrence.
Can I just, through you, Chair, ask Democratic Services why we can't run them in parallel, please?
It would be a question of officer resource, essentially.
Thank you. Can you repeat your proposal, Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, again, I'm going to say I know the Medway is really, I'm not downgrading it. I said it would come after the air. So I'm proposing air quality and active travel is first, and then the Medway 2.0 can come after.
Sorry, that's seconded already. Yep, I've got.
I'd just like to say that, you know, we've been saying, officers are working on 2.0. We've had a climate change emergency group for the last 4 years, where air quality is one of the top actions in the action plan. So we are working on that as well. It's not as though we haven't thought about air quality before. It's you know, one of the things. They've got a lovely website telling us exactly what they're doing, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Hubbard. Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor Hackwell, it's not something I just picked out of a book and threw it at the committee. It's something that was advised strongly by our public health team. They have not enough data on air quality in Medway, and it was a big issue around active travel. So it wasn't something we just picked out the air and said, let's have a look at air quality. It's something that we know impacts our residents, and we haven't got enough information on it. And that was from our public health team as well. They haven't got enough data on how it impacts the whole of Medway. You can argue it with me. I'm not the expert on it. That's what the task group needs to look at, doesn't it?
I agree, but it's not as important.
Okay, members. So we go into the vote on the first task group in terms of priority. Those.
Can I?
Yeah.
I was going to ask a point of order there because I'm not quite.
Sorry, point of order,
Yeah.
Councillor Crosser.
Can you just somebody read out the proposal so that we can? Can somebody read out the proposal so I know what I'm voting for?
The proposal is the order of task group in terms of which one goes first, priority. And what we have is air quality and public transport and active travel as the first task group. Those in favor? None. Those against? So that's passed. Now for the second task group in terms of priority. Do we have a proposal?
Yeah, Medway 2.0. Thank you.
Okay. That's. So we just got Medway 2.0. Is that agreed? Okay. Now, in order, third, do we have a proposal? Sir, do we have a proposal? Children. Seconded, children, mental health. Is that agreed? And do we have a proposal for the next? We've got a new housing regime. Housing task, yeah. That agreed? So that leaves us with education and inequality as the last task group. Over to you, Vice Chair. The recommendation at page 23.
Sorry, you just said that the education inequality is the last task group, so that isn't going to be combined with child mental health? No.
Point of order, Chair. Can somebody just read out the 5 in order so I've got that down? The 5 priorities, so the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, please.
Steve, can you read that first, please?
So the first task group will be air quality, public transport, and the active travel, then Medway 2.0, then child mental health, then the new social housing inspection regime, and then education inequality.
Thank you, Steve. Over to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations 1.1 to 1.4 at page 23 that the committee agrees the work programme at Appendix 1 to the report. The committee notes the work programmes of the other overview and scrutiny committees at Appendix 2. The committee agrees the priority order of the task group topics, namely air quality and public transport and active travel as first, Medway 2.0 second, child mental health third, new social housing regime fourth, and education inequality fifth, and agrees at the start of the first task group selected with a membership of 5 councillors, 3 Labour, 1 Conservative and 1 independent group member for a single issue group. The committee authorises the head of Democratic Services to appoint the members to the first task group once nominations have been received from group whips in consultation with the relevant overview and scrutiny committee chairperson, vice chairperson and opposition spokespersons.
Point of order, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Madge. We've got a point of order.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't debated the work programme yet. We've gone to the recommendations. I mean, for example, I think that November's work programme with a portfolio holder and talking about the capital outlay and is far too large. We'll be here till gone midnight if we have all of those subjects in November. So I'd like to debate as a group what we think we can handle, at least in November, before we go to the recommendations to vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Hagwell.
Point of order.
Councillor Croser.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. The Vice Chair suggested that the ratios were just for single. We didn't agree on changing the ratios across the board at all, did we? So are you saying the ratio of 511 or whatever that was, 311, was just for single groups? I don't think we voted on that. We voted on. I don't think we voted on that at all. That was part of Councillor Galvin's amendment.
We did.
We voted on that.
Yeah.
So what was going to be the ratio for joint then? I don't remember voting on that. We haven't voted on that yet. No. So that's going to be the subject of a discussion on a future evening here.
George, you're going to get a seat.
So what was moved and agreed was that the ratio would be 311, and that would be for a single task group, and that was agreed.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Just to help Councillor Croser as well, but Steve, what we did say was we need some clarity on the joint, because we've now had a joint one. So when the two come together, what's the numbering on that? So we have got to have some discussion on that, whether it's 6, 2, and 1 or whatever it is. We need to making sure there's good representation between two ONSs on one task group.
Yes. Sorry.
Go on, Steve.
So I agreed to take that earlier in the discussion. I agreed we would take that back in terms of representation of both MNSs.
Thank you, Steve. So we've had a point of order raised by Councillor Hackworth with regards to the work programme. Do we have any other member who want to speak on that? Councillor
Yes, Chair,
Goldman.
I think we do need to decide whether the amount that's on the programme for the December meeting for this committee, November is the one, for the November the 30th, is what we want. We've got procurement strategy, capital budget.
The budget.
Yeah, budget, yeah.
It's a huge subject.
And attendance of a portfolio holder.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you raise an issue with the work programme being overloaded.
Are we happy with that?
Are we happy? Do we have a proposal?
I propose that we remove the portfolio holder. I think the budget, the pre-scrutiny, it's a pre-scrutiny budget, so we have an opportunity to influence that budget as a business overview and scrutiny committee, because it's a pre-decision scrutiny. So I think that the debate on that shall be long, and I think that we should at least remove the portfolio holder to a different evening, and maybe even the universal credit and welfare reforms.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay. Those in favour? Those against? The 7. The proposal is lost. Councillor MacDonald.
Chair, just looking at that though, where the portfolio holder couldn't come this evening, am I right, there is 2, is it 1? Oh, there's 2, yes, there's only 1 still.
Sorry, Councillor.
Well, through you, Chair, that does beg a question. When are we going to have the presentation from the portfolio holder that should have been here this evening?
Steve, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, it's listed now for the 4th of April.
Thank you. Back to you, Vice Chair. Actually, you've done your proposal already, haven't you? Is that seconded? Agreed? The meeting is now closed. Thank you.
you.